Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome to part one of the Terran Trade Authority book series that I will be bringing to you over the course of the next weeks. There are several volumes in this series, and there's a couple I don't have, but rest assured they will be in my collection at some point in the near future. One is already on the way. I've got one there, and I will be talking about the great space battles, and it's not actually the first in the series. The first in the series is actually Spacecraft 2000 to 2100 AD, but I wanted to talk about this one because a couple reasons. One, I actually have a slipcover and it looks better on the camera than the book that I have that has no slipcover, but the other reason is this is one of my favorites of the volume of the series, mind you. I used to have some of these a long time ago, but things happened and I no longer have them all. But there's also actually a role-playing game that I'm going to be taking a look at to maybe go along with another RPG that I'm very fond of in premise. I haven't completely read it, so we'll see. But back in 1979, Stuart Crowley and Charles Hedridge and a few other folks got together and compiled this lore around a large series of artwork that they were able to get a hold of. Let's start off with that cover again, shall we? Just get rid of that glare. All of this is, iconic, I want to say 60s and 70s artwork. Great famous paintings that also saw the cover of many paperback books of different science fiction pulp type lore throughout that era. But it chronicles the history of Earth in their journey into space and exploration and its own little universe without being tied to a specific story other than these books, and tried telling a story based on the images that are in these books, and tried to sort of link it all together into one great big epic sweeping tale across the galaxy as mankind journey to the stars. And my camera here is not going to be able to give you justice. I'm going to try and show off a couple of my favorite images in here, but each image has like a page of lore to encapsulate the story from that image and move forward. And there are scores of great pictures in here, mostly of epic space battles, but there's one I'm looking for in particular. They're all just so fantastic, and the style of artwork never in my opinion was never surpassed. This classic 60s and 70s style, paintings of things that, to this day have yet to happen, but just absolutely gorgeous artwork. And these were, for the most part, just coffee table books that, back in the day when people had coffee tables and books on those coffee tables, it would be a book that you could just flip through and look at the art and maybe, give you an example of one real quick. Let's go back. There was a better one that kind of shows off what I'm talking about. It would here we go. This one's classic. You could kind of read the little story on this side of the book while looking at the image there while you're having a conversation or waiting for your friend to bring the coffee or come back from the restroom or any other little activities people used to have when they'd have each other over. Mind you, this is all way before role-playing games. Mind you, 79 wasn't really before role-playing games, but the coffee table book notion, people would come over and you'd chit-chat, not really watch TV, but just have a social visit and talk about things, and there would be books on the table to take a look at, to see what your friend was interested in. A lot of times they were books on animals or plants or castles and famous places, exotic locations and things like that. And you cannot get more exotic than the Terran Trade Federation series of books. And this one is mostly of the great space battles, and it jumps, the books, if you read them in order or what have you, they all jump back and forth and talk about things in the future, and then the next book will start back kind of around the year 2000, which was 20 years ahead of when these books were put out. And there was just so much fun. I remember a friend of my dad's had these books on his coffee table, and that's where I first discovered them. And I was just absolutely amazed with the just sweeping magnificence and just long before like Games Workshops, 40K and things like that, where everything was massive. This series of books had massive starships and battles and scenery that was just ridiculous, in scope and size. There's a really good one on the back as well. Get rid of that glare. And I just wanted to share these with you. They're not easy to come by, and they're definitely not cheap, but they're definitely worth having if you're planning on running any sort of sci-fi game or campaign and you need inspiration for massive starships, massive epic battles. The book I'm actually waiting on is Space Wrecks, which is actually stories of ill-fated starships that didn't quite get to where they were going, and the attempted recovery of these giant, monolithic, enormous starships, and the cost in human life and resources and strange locations that they would crash, and I'll be bringing that one to you very shortly, probably next week or the week after. And I just thought it would be a nice little trip down memory lane to share these with you. You could probably find a lot of the images, if not the entirety, on the high seas, and peruse them. And this is just, see if you can see this one. It's these two massive, like, land tanks of some sort that are just waging war on one another with rockets and things like that. But just the strange shape that they took, not your usual like tank style battle, but just these huge like mobile towers, firing rockets and weaponry at each other that would dwarf skyscrapers of today. And everything in these books is just on the absolute ridiculous level of size and what it would take to create, let alone to get these monstrous vehicles. Here's a classic example of another one. The ship is just so massive that it borderlines on ridiculous. But that was the style and the scope and the majesty of these books and the stories they tried to tell as mankind grasped at the stars and tried to make them their own. If you guys have ever read these or come across these or have them in your collection, I'd love to hear about it. They're very, very hard to come by, and some of my favorite books that I've ever owned that weren't RPGs or just regular novels. Just because of the absolute beauty of the artwork. We don't really see stuff like this anymore, and we probably won't, and they're probably only going to become harder and harder to find as the years roll on. But let me know what you thought. If you have them, if you'd like to have them, if you have the role-playing game, let me know how that pans out. I'm very curious to see what that's like and all about. It's also kind of a hard game to come by, but I never hear anybody talking about this. This was also a big favorite of our friend Shauner's, and he was actually the one who reminded me that, hey, they exist, and I used to get to look at them all the time, and wouldn't it be great to have them back in my collection and use them as reference material for upcoming sci-fi games. As you know, I do a regular sci-fi show on Saturday nights when I'm not hosting or being in a game on Saturday nights on my channel. So let's talk some more sci-fi, starting with the Terran Trade Authority. That's what I got for you now. I'll be back in 15 minutes to talk about the game I ran tonight. It was a lot of fun. Maybe I'll incorporate some of this into Barrows and Borderlands, make it a little more sci-fi. Maybe they'll see a big, giant, freaking crazy spaceship up, by the rings of Saturn or some such. But until then, I will see you guys real soon, and happy trails.